Hi, this is Brian Rodriguez, and I'm here to review Barbara Warnick's Rhetoric Online. This is what it looks like. As you can see, it's pretty small, about 120 pages, but as far as content and material, it's actually really dense. The author, Barbara Warnick, is a professor at the University of Pittsburgh in the communications department, and she kind of, throughout her, at least the last part of her career, has made a little niche for herself in talking about online persuasion and rhetoric. We're here at her website here, hopefully, and you can see, if I go to a list of her publications, before this she published an article, Rhetoric on the Web, and before that, Web-Based Memorializing After September 11th. And some other titles are Looking to the Future, Electronic Text and the Deepening Interface, and Text-Based Interactivity in Candidate Campaign Websites. Warnick opens the book by referencing Jürgen Habermas's theory of the public sphere, and to briefly generalize and butcher his theory somewhat, Habermas argues that the growth of capitalism has led to the uneven distribution of wealth, which in turn has led to a rise in media power, or the ability for the media to sort of manipulate and influence political change. Warnick then relates this to four specific areas of globalization. What's kind of interesting about Warnick's argument is that she cites, or in some ways implies, that the internet was born as a result of globalization, but at the same time it can also be a place for people to organize and put up resistance to the detrimental effects of globalization, the four of which I just mentioned. And at this point in the book, she talks about, very briefly, she talks about two specific instances of this. One is the Zapatista movement in Mexico, which was a resistance organized somewhat around internet activities, and also several instances where Greenpeace has used the internet to enact a social or political change. One of the major arguments Warnick makes throughout her book, or at least implies, is that the application of existing models of rhetorical theory shouldn't be applied directly to new media, such as what we have when we're talking about online spaces. She points out many reasons for this. Three of the most salient are in relationship to the user's experience, authorless message, and the lack of archives. When talking about the user's experience, her point is that when reading a traditional text, we have a linear experience, whereas in an online text, such as a website, the reader makes their own way through the text by clicking on links, pictures, and in a sense creates the website or their experience as they go. When she talks about the authorless message, what she's getting at is that oftentimes websites don't have declared authors, or their websites are written by a group, usually motivated by capitalist interests. She also points out, as I mentioned, that there's a lack of archives. So it's difficult to judge ethos. It's difficult to prove what you had seen previously. She does mention a site called the archive.org or the waybackmachine.org, which does attempt to catalog several internet sites as they existed at one time, but she points out that it's often an ephemeral experience that one has when dealing with web sources. The third chapter of Warnick's book is sort of the meat and potatoes of the book. It's called The Field Dependency of Online Credibility, and it's where she presents her adapted field model of stemming from the Toulmin model of argument to analyze online text. She starts with a discussion of ethos as Aristotle saw it, and then later she talks about Barthes and Foucault, and she mentions that online, the Foucauldian prediction of an authorless world seems to be coming true. But she mentions there's several ways we can still establish internet credibility for websites. As I've mentioned a couple times, Warnick bases her field model for analyzing web text and establishing credibility of web text from the Toulmin model. And as you can see here, here's just something I pulled off of Google that gives a general idea of Toulmin's model of argument. This isn't precisely what Warnick uses, but it's one example we can look at just to sort of put everybody on the same page here. Things like evidence, warrant, backing, and claims are what Warnick focuses on. One of the most fun and interesting examples Warnick gives of her field model in action is in relationship to imdb.com. If we look at the site here, what she shows as evidence is that the site loads quickly and it contains a searchable database. The movies and different things work on it. For warrant, she does an excellent site functionality. And backing, and for backing, it's an entertainment site, so when users go there, what they're looking for is quick access to materials. And then finally, she makes the claim that based on those reasons, IMDb can be considered a generally reliable site. A more serious example Warnick gives of a website that she analyzes with her field model is an analysis of indiemedia.org. Indiemedia.org is a site dedicated to allowing grassroots reporting on political issues. And in that way, they can sort of circumvent the mass media, and anyone can upload or report on news actually as it's happening in the field without having to go through a mass media organization. In examining IndiaMedia.org, Warnick notes that judgments about credibility can be reached on the basis of scholarly opinion about the site's practices, the site's own fact section, descriptions of how the site is run, and comments by users in situations where backing is called into question. The last point is particularly interesting because on a site like IndiaMedia.org, if someone posts something that the credibility is called into question, what Warnick suggests is that you can establish credibility by looking at users' comments, and if you take a representative sample of those and analyze them, you can decide or establish whether or not to trust the source of the information that's being reported. Regarding intertextuality, Warnick builds her definition out of Bakhtin and Kristeva, and she focuses on two sites and provides two examples. The first site I want to talk about is jibjab.com, where Warnick looks at a political satire that was run during the Kerry Bush campaign era. And the satire is called something like "This Land Is Your Land." The point is that during the satire, the Woody Guthrie song "This Land Is Your Land" is playing in the background. And she considers this an intertextual element because in order for users to really get the joke or the satire that's going on, they would have to know the original way the song was used and the original way the song was intended to be listened to, or the original meaning people were to make of the song. The other example of intertextuality she gives is Adbusters, and she looks at a spoof ad they made of the colors of Benetton ads. And in this case, here we see that she's looking at an ad which has the format of the Benetton ad, but also is pointing out that the colors of Benetton are actually green, specifically the green of money, and what they really want is not to bring the world together, but to soak you for all the dollars they can. Overall, would I recommend this Rhetoric Online by Barbara Warnick? For anyone interested in the field, I think this is a great book and it's very useful. There's a lot here, and Warnick's she's on the cutting edge of something here, so that's always fun and interesting. If you're not interested in the field and you're looking for a general reader or something for more of a mass consumption point of view, definitely no. This book is certainly for people that have some knowledge in the field and have some interest in these issues and are willing to really dig in and look at some of these sources and some of these arguments. So that's Rhetoric Online. Here it is once more, and thank you.